So I'm Dan, and I'd like to tell you about a show that makes me very happy. And that is a show about death. Before you start wondering what kind of a serial killer I am, let me explain. I'm talking about Shigofumi, Letters from the Departed.
Yes!
Ah, good. Somebody has seen it. Excellent. Shigofumi's title is pretty self-explanatory once you get to know about the key protagonist of the show and what she does. So let me introduce Fumika, a postal worker from the afterlife. And if that description right there hasn't gotten at least a few more of you interested, then, well, I don't know what will. Fumika is assisted on her jobs by a mouthy sentient staff named Kanaka. It gives her limited magical powers in order to complete those jobs. Together, those jobs are to deliver Shigofumi, a portmanteau of Shigo, death, and Fumi, letter. As the name suggests, these are letters that are sent by people who have died and are sometimes allowed to be sent back to the world of the living. Shigofumi always obeys certain rules. They are the strongest sentiments that can be sent by the dead. They can only be sent once by a given person, and they are always completely honest. Nothing in a Shigofumi can be a lie. What a Shigofumi actually contains, however, can vary pretty wildly. They can be words that were left unsaid in life, or something far more sinister, as in this case. Early in the show, it focuses on Fumika and Kanaka as they make deliveries throughout the city that is their designated delivery zone. And Fumika is not the only post worker that we meet. Her friend Chiaki and others received their letters from a group called the Gospel Department. Now, the organization is a bit vague and doesn't really get a lot of screen time, but that doesn't really hurt the show too much because it spends most of its time focusing on Fumika and the people that she meets. As an agent of the afterlife, Fumika is generally very businesslike. She refrains from meddling in the affairs of mortals. Her only job is to make sure that the letters are delivered. However, she is fiercely determined to see that task fulfilled and will go to extreme lengths to see the job done. Much of the show, as I said, focuses on the individuals that she meets and how they react to the letters that they receive. Obviously, not everyone buys what she tells them. Reactions can range from disbelief to straight-up anger, but other people find relief and even gratitude at being able to get the words of someone who they thought they would never see again. Everyone has to face their own mortality, and it certainly made me think about the kinds of things I would want to say to the people that I know, and what I wish I could have heard from people who have already passed on. The end of life is something that we all struggle with, and because of that, it stirs some very strong emotions in pretty much everyone. Shigofumi, it drives home the point that everyone thinks about death. You, me, everybody. Suicide, loss, everything. Even otherwise perfectly happy people think about these things from time to time. It's part of the human condition. The show handles it very well, following those affected by death and showing the audience how they react. This more observational approach delivers some very heartfelt and moving moments. However, death isn't Shigofumi's only focus. It also touches on other important themes in life, such as bullying and the psychological toll it can take. A lot of anime like to show high school as some sort of magical place full of friendship and romance and all that. But as a lot of us here can probably point out, it can be hell. And while it may highlight some extreme examples in that case, I appreciate that it doesn't sugarcoat anything. The show also deals with things as you get older. Societal pressures come and harm you when your life doesn't work out the way it's supposed to. And I like this in particular because you can't talk about death if you don't know how to talk about life, and the writers of Shigofumi absolutely understood that. An aspect of life that the show focuses on later is the issue of privacy. Shigofumi was released in 2008, and the ubiquity of social media, 24-hour news, so on and so forth, that's only gotten more intense since then. And the stress of dealing with death and everything around it can only be made worse by the media circus that inevitably surrounds the passing of anyone who's particularly well known, or if they die under mysterious circumstances, which often happens in the show. It's a very chilling thing, but it's become so widespread that the show focuses us to look at ourselves and consider how would we react to these sorts of things, how do we react to it in the news, when we see it on TV, so on. It's a very interesting question. Now, from what I've said, it may seem like the show is nothing but a depressing grind, but that is not always the case. The show takes time for levity between its more serious parts, and the tone of the episodes can be pretty varied and self-contained. The creators did a really good job of balancing humor and drama. Much of the series plays out as we follow Fumika, but we also meet a wider cast throughout the episodes, including Kaname and Natsuki here, two high school students who are getting drawn into Fumika's story over the course of the series. I really like these two a lot because they play a very active role in the story, and they don't just wait around for the next plot point to fall into their laps. In fact, most of the plot is propelled forward by the actions of the main cast rather than by outside forces. And as we meet more of the cast, we also start to learn more about Fumiga herself and the circumstances that led her to taking the job she has now. Something about her is different from the other postal workers that we meet, like Chiaki here. And Chiaki in particular has her own history that the show is happy to explore, but while the show does an amazing job of giving the bulk of the cast their own time to shine, it never loses its direction with our protagonist. It becomes apparent that Fumiga carries a lot of emotional weight from her past and is very intent on finishing her own agenda outside of her job. While she may initially seem flat and emotionless, her story becomes extremely compelling the more that we find out about her. And it eventually comes to a head when she becomes the show's focus in the second half. Things get very intense and no punches are pulled emotionally or visually. So if you are looking for a show that explores some serious subject matter without resorting to pure shock value, and if you want to see something that delivers on a lot of weighty stories, both personal and profound, yet manages to come to an incredibly satisfying conclusion by the very end, then I am going to say that you owe it to yourself to watch Shigofumi. I tell you, it will be well worth your time. And here's some facts for you before I head off. Thank you very much.